Hari Om. Let's get
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। गीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्धधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्तोत्कटम् नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाभूदितम् लोके सज्जन षट्परैरहरः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद् भारत पंकजं कलिमला प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः। Devaya tasmai namaha. Devaya tasmai namaha.
Hari Om. So Bhagwan spoke about how action can be inaction and how inaction can be action. Action becomes inaction, tushni bhava, not by stopping action, not by stopping to act, because then that becomes tamasic bhava, but by giving up the notion of doership. Stopping action or being tamasic is also a form of action. And once the sense of I am the doer, that is given up, expectation of the result also ceases to be there. So by giving up kartritva, bhoktritva also dissolves, goes away. So how does one give up the sense of doership? The knowledge or jnana that makes the person a yogi, a yuktaha. That knowledge helps the individual see action in inaction and inaction in action. And this ability to see action in inaction and inaction in action is equal to truly giving up action. So essentially, Bhagwan tells us that if we are able to recognize and if we are able to understand what action in inaction is and inaction in inaction is, then we are truly giving up action. Hence, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, which is what this chapter is, what we are all going through. Jnana is knowledge of Akarta and Abhokta, that we are Akarta and we are Abhokta. And in that knowledge, Karma Sannyasa Yoga, that is renunciation of action, the yoga of renunciation of action. Having thus renounced, Tyaktva is renunciation. Having thus renounced excessive attachment, asangam, to what? To karma phala, karma and karma phala, karma and phala, which is action and the fruits that come out of action. This person becomes nitya triptaha and nirashrayaha, which is ever content and not dependent on anything else or anyone else, not dependent as a person. In the last satsang, we had said that the person being naturally nitya triptaha and nirashrayaha is able to renunciate. Now we are saying it the other way around. Now we are saying that a person who renunciates becomes nitya triptaha and nirashrayaha. This is because it's a cyclic phenomenon. Being naturally content and not dependent, one is able to renunciate, and by renunciating, one is able to be contented and also not dependent. The vision of the person seeking knowledge is comprised of two aspects. The seeker wonders, who am I? And the seeker also wonders, what is this world? What is this world made up of? And so on and so forth. And the vision of a person of knowledge is that the world is also an expression or manifestation of my consciousness. It is said that anatmani atma buddhi, having the notion of the self in the not self, is what this knowledge is. Anatmani, in the not self. In the not self, having the buddhi of Atma. The various aspects that contribute to action, they are called karaka. All of those things that come together to build and create action are karaka. Karayeti iti karaka is how it is said. That which enables action is karaka. And what are the things that enable action? For example, at this moment, we are in this satsang, in the Bhagavad Gita satsang. I am speaking, you are listening, you are taking notes maybe. We are both, or we are all actors, which is we are the karta. The karana is the instrument, which is the iPad, the computer, the phone, the table in which we are keeping our equipment, the chair in which we are sitting, and so on and so forth. Adhikarana is the application. For example, in this case, as part of this satsang, the Zoom call over which we are having the meeting, the Zoom meeting over which we are having the satsang, the internet service provider that all of us are using individually. For example, I'm using BSNL, the room in which we are sitting, all of these are part of Adhikarana. And karma itself is the action, which is speaking, listening, writing, and so on and so forth. So essentially, we have the doer, we have the instrument, we have the substratum, and we have the action itself. And all these are enabled by the purpose, the place, and the time, which are the enablers. And a person whose mind is established in knowledge, Jnanavastita Chetasa is what we saw in the last session. Jnanavastita Chetasa, the person with mind established firmly in the knowledge. Knowledge of what? Knowledge of being Akarta and the knowledge of being Abhokta. And because this person is able to be Akarta and Abhokta, because the person is already a Mukta, a Muktasya, free of the aspect of Kartritva and Bhoktritva, free of doership, free of enjoyership. And Gata Sangasya, not wanting anything, devoid of any attachment or any wants. Such a person then performs actions. Acharataha. For the sake of what? This person is acting like everyone else is acting. But this person is acting for the sake of duty with the spirit of Yajna. Yajnaya. In the spirit of cooperative endeavor. And we saw that the Yajnas were of 5 types. Deva Yajna, Brahma Yajna, Pitru Yajna, Manushya Yajna, and Bhuta Yajna. The next verse, it explains to us that when performed in such a manner, every component of action is an expression of pure consciousness. We will go through the verse.
Brahmarpanam
Brahmarpanam Brahmahavihi
Brahmahavihi Brahmagnau Brahmanahutam
Brahmagnau Brahmanahutam
Brahmaivatena Gantavyam
Brahmaivatena Gantavyam
Brahma Karma Samadhina
Brahma Karma Samadhinam
Brahmarpanam Brahmahavihi Brahmagnau Brahmanahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina.
The Brahman is the all-encompassing whole and the changeless substratum on top of this ever-changing phenomena of the world, which the underlying changeless phenomena on the panorama of the world that we see. That Brahman is the supreme. The previous verse, which was the last verse of our last satsang, that states that action should be performed as an act of sacrifice to the supreme, renunciating the lower to attain the higher. For example, we had said in the last satsang that if fitness is the goal, then one sacrifices morning sleep for exercise. So the verse itself was Gata Sangasya Muktasya Jnanavastita Chetasaha. Jnanavastita Chetasaha, the person with that knowledge. Yajnaya Charatah Karma Samagram Praviliyate. So essentially renunciating the lower for the higher goal that we have. So what is the nature of such sacrifice? While the last verse tells us that we should sacrifice, what is the nature of it? What are the fundamental principles behind this? This verse explains all of that. Now, material actions are compulsory for every living entity. All living beings are involved in or indulging in material action. Because they are bound to this material world, we are all part and parcel of the material creation that we see around us. In such a mundane and restless existence, the discharge of the prescribed duties with faith and devotion is called yajna. And we saw what prescribed duties are in detail. In every yajna, there are 5 essential factors. The first one is arpanam. Arpanam means the offering or the oblation, including the instrument with which we offer. So in our example, the effort required for waking up and for doing the exercise, that can be said to be arpanam. In a typical fire sacrifice that we are all familiar with, when we do a yajna with fire, then the ladle, the spoon, and the oblation, they are arpanam. Havihi. Havihi are the ingredients or the materials that constitute the offering. So in a fire sacrifice, the ghee, the rarefied butter. In case of our example, the sleep or the warmth of the bed, which are the ingredients of what we sacrifice. The third element is Agni. Agni is that into which the offerings are presented, subsumed. Sleep is poured into waking. Warmth of the bed is given up for, let us say, it's cold outside. So we get up and we take a run in the cold. So that warmth of the bed is given up for that. In the case of a fire ritual or yajna, it is the fire itself. The Brahmana is the person who is making the sacrifice, the individual performing the yajna. In the case of a fire ritual, the priest also, who is enabling, or for example, if you are waking up early morning and going for a session, if you have a coach, that coach also is the Brahmana, along with the person who is actually performing the action. And Gantavyam. Gantavyam means what is reached, the goal, by the Brahmana on performing the yajna. So fit body, mind and intellect, weight loss, 6-pack abs, tournament victory in which you are participating, examination result for which you are preparing, and possibly giving up sleep, sacrificing sleep, and so on and so forth. In the case of a fire ritual, whatever the sankalpa may be. So these are the 5 elements that are essential aspects for any yajna. This verse explains the attitude and the experience of the perfect Brahmana, the perfect sage, when she performs the yajna. What should be the attitude of this person? To this person, each of the 5 constituents of yajna, sacrifice, are Brahman. That is the attitude with which the person performs. Each of these are the eternal supreme. So, to him, Brahmarpanam, the offering is supreme Brahman, to which the ingredients are also supreme Brahman. And these ingredients are offered, Brahma Havihi. And they are offered in what? In the Brahmagnav, the Agni, or whatever into which the offering is made, that is also Supreme Brahman. And the one who offered the self, the Brahmana, that also is Supreme Brahman, Brahmana Hutam. And Brahmaiva Teva Gantavyam, the goal that is to be Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, the goal that is reached, that also is Supreme Brahman. And the very karma, the action that requires deep focus in order to do all of this, a completely meditative state to do it perfectly, that also is Supreme Brahman, Brahma Karma Samadhina. Thus, every aspect of action that we just went through, the various aspects, all of those aspects and the action itself, everything is Brahman. How beautiful it is, whatever we do, however we do, whatever we are using to do, whatever the underlying instruments are, the enablers are, everything is supreme. And the perfect sage does all actions with this attitude. Those who are established in this kind of an attitude, which is, considering everything to be the supreme and sacrificing for the higher, fully, completely, with a wholesome nature, holy, thinking only of the supreme, that comes from the knowledge. And that person can actually see the Brahman in all. And what is the Brahman? The Brahman is the supreme. So whatever is supreme to us is the Brahman. These yogis are most accomplished. They choose themselves, what they do, and the meaning of life to be the supreme Brahman. And their awareness is centered on the supreme Brahman. Now, what about those who are not intent on such practice? So we'll all understand and acknowledge, even as we are growing through this, that it is extremely difficult to do everything, thinking of everything that we do, thinking of all these enablers and the ingredients of what we do and ourselves, everything to be the supreme Brahman. What of those people who, are not able to be so intensive, be so much intent on such a practice? What about them? So let's go back to my favorite, one of my favorites rather, Stephen Hawking. Okay. So this time we will discuss a little bit about what he says about the meaning of life. So he says, and I quote, "The conscious mind is created by the brain as a whole. The brain is an organ of stupendous complexity that I find," which means Stephen Hawking finds, "is mind-boggling. It contains as many cells as there are stars in the universe, over 100 billion. These cells are interlinked, creating more connections than the galaxies that are there in the universe. In this small brain of ours, there are much more interconnections between these cells, which are over 100 billion, than there are connections in the galaxies with over 100 billion stars." And Hawking says, "As a physicist, I see the human mind as one of the most wonderful of universe's creations," unquote. So as a skeptic, Stephen Hawking calls it universe's creation. The believers would call it God's creation, Brahman. That is what the believers would call it. The more aware an animal of its environment, we have the body, mind, and intellects, and the soul, and whatever is not the BMI. So that environment, whatever is not part of my being and my soul, all of that, the more aware that an animal is of its environment, the more successful it would be. And eventually awareness became so sophisticated that one animal became aware of itself. There are other animals too that became aware of themselves to a large extent. But one animal is able to discuss the way we are all discussing, right? And that is what we are. We are that animal, that self-aware human being, equipped with the ability to be conscious and be aware of consciousness at the level of the material world as well as at the level of the Supreme Brahman. So when consciousness manifests in matter, it is called Brahman. Hawking says it a little bit differently. He says reality itself is in the mind of the beholder. This is one of the most famous accomplished scientists. And that the human mind creates and stimulates mental models. So how do we know that, the tree, when we are in a forest, there is a tree and the tree remains in the forest after we leave the forest? How do we know that? Or for example, if you leave the room that you are sitting in now, how do you know that the table and the chair that are there in the room now are going to be there after you have left the room? They are there when you come back again. But for all you know, they have made a trip to the moon, across the moon, around the moon, and come back. That is also possible. So it is best that we assume that the table and the chair were indeed in the room when I had gone out, stepped out for a cup of water and came back. Or when I leave the forest, the tree that I saw in the forest is still there. It's better to assume this. And this assumption is called the best fit model in science. So science calls this the best fit model. We create best fit models on how we believe the universe is built and the universe exists and operates. So Hawking continues and he says, I quote, he says, we humans are extremely complex biological machines behaving in accordance with the laws of nature. Our brains create and sustain our conscious minds through an extraordinary network of interactive neurons. The consciousness creates a three-dimensional model of the outside world, a best fit model that we call reality. As we peer higher and higher and deeper into the cosmos, he says, the reality grows bigger and bigger, right up to the beginning of the universe, which is the black hole. The brain not only perceives the reality built by it, but it also gives it a meaning. So this best fit model that is built by the brain, Hawking says, it builds it, creates it, and gives it a meaning. The meaning of life is what we choose it to be, unquote. In Vedanta, we say Anatmani Atma Buddhi, which is what we saw a little earlier, having the notion of the self in the not self. Hawking and many other scientists, like we had discussed earlier in one of the earlier satsang about René Descartes, the person who said, I think, therefore I am, among the first scientists in the world. They have come to this conclusion. However, most scientists, including Hawking, they are all in the I and my zone, aham and mama, my brain. And my brain creates my universe. And man is the creation of that universe. Sri Krishna is the only scientist, I believe, this is my personal belief, he is the only scientist who not only came to the same conclusion, much before a lot of these scientists, but also prescribed a methodology to live amongst the interacting models that are created by these beings. The interacting beings create interacting models. We are all interacting with each other. Sri Krishna was the first and the only one, I would say, scientist to have prescribed a methodology to live amongst and interact with each other. And Bhagavan now presents a series of 12 yagyas. So what about the person who is not able to think of everything as the Supreme Brahman? Bhagavan presents a series of 12 yagyas that humans take up. What one sacrifices in what type of fire that accepts the sacrifice. We will go through each one of these. The first two are covered in the next verse.
Devameva pare yajnam.
Devameva pare yajnam.
Yogina paryupasate.
Yogina paryupasate.
Brahmagnava pare yajnam.
Brahmagnava pare yajnam.
Yajnenaivopajuhvati.
Yajnenaivopajuhvati.
Devameva pare yajnam. Yogina paryupasate. Brahmagnava pare yajnam. Yajnenaivopajuhvati.
Apare yoginaha. Apare is others, yoginaha is yogis, other practitioners. Those who are not yet able to do what? Brahmagnav, Brahmahavihi. Those other practitioners who are not able to see Brahman in every action of theirs. Those Daivam Yagyam Paryupasate. They perform yagyas intent upon deities. This is the first one, first of the 12 yagyas. They sacrifice to deities. So this is the first and is covered in the line 1 of verse 25. These practitioners, they sacrifice to various devas and devis. We have seen that, right? We pray to Anjaneya, we pray to Ganesha, we pray to Sudarshana, we pray to Subramanya, we pray to Lakshmi, we pray to Durga. So all of these are facets of Brahman. And sacrifices done to them with devotion are conducive to spiritual growth. So karma yogis perform such sacrifice as their duty. They do all of this as their duty, taking it up as a duty of theirs. And as such, performance of karma yoga implies performance of daiva yagyam or karma yagya. And still others, apare, brahmagnau, which is brahmagnau, in the fire of the Brahman or the self. In this context, Brahma implies the self. In the fire of the self, yagyam yagne naivopi juhvati. Offer the self by the self. So in the fire of the self, offer the self by the self. So we have heard about in us, by us, for us. So this is what in a different way it is in this context. Sacrifice the self, offer the self, by the self, in the self. So these practitioners, they offer the self by the self, in the self. This is nothing but surrendering individual consciousness, the self, to the cosmic consciousness. Surrendering individual consciousness to cosmic consciousness. That requires what? That requires sublimation of the Jivatma, that is sublimation of this concept of I, the ego, in the Paramatma. And that is nothing but dedicating oneself to the Brahman, to the Supreme, to Bhagavan. So this cannot happen without crucifixion of the ego. So crucifying the ego, and to crucify the ego, you need to have the knowledge. So these jnana yogis, they crucify their ego, they sublimate their ego or the sense of Jivatma in the Paramatma, and they offer themselves. Thereby, this solemn act becomes jnana yagya. The first yagya is karma yagya, where we, with devotion and faith, worship the deities. And this, where we sublime our sense of self, our sense of ego into our sense of Jivatma into the Paramatma, is Jnana Yagya. We will now continue to see what the other yagyas are. The next verse covers the third and the fourth yagya.
Srotraadinindriyanyanye
Shrotraadinindriyanyanye
Samyamagnishu juhvati
Samyamagnishu juhvati
Shabdadin vishayananya
Sabdadin vishayananye
Indriyagnishu juhvati
Indriyagnishu juhvati
Srotraadinindriyanyanye Samyamagnishu juhvati Shabdadin vishayananya Indrayagnishu juhvati.
So two diametrically opposite yagyas are covered or enunciated in this verse. The function of the first one is to make senses ineffective, and that of the second one is to make the senses super effective. So the third yagya, which is talked about in line 1 of this verse, that says that still others, still other meaning still other practitioners, people who are performing action, they offer their senses, the Jnanendriya and the Karmendriya, in the fire of restraint. Samyama. Samyama is the term given for restraint. And what is samyama? Samyama is dharana, dhyana, samadhi. Dharana is to hold the mind in one place, the steady-minded, not allowing it to wander, holding it in yourself. Dhyana is to give the mind an object of focus, something which is outside of us. Like I said the other day, when we say a camel, that becomes the object. So giving the mind an object of focus. If I say that I want to win this tournament, that is the object of focus. If I say that I want to pass this examination or come first in this examination, that is the object of focus. And it could be a symbol, a sound, or a deity. So when we sit to meditate, giving the mind an object of focus in the form of a symbol, a sound, or a deity. And when we do this, when we do dhyana, the mind is continually thinking about this object. And when we sit to meditate, if it is a deity or if it is, let's say, the symbol of Om, it is continually thinking about that Lord, that symbol or that supreme object. And I'm using the word continually. Continually because there are interruptions. The phone is ringing, it's time for lunch, I'm having that hunger pang. So intermittent focused thought is dhyana. Together, dharana, dhyana and samadhi are called samyama. And this is the fire into which the offering is made. And what is the sacrifice? Shrotra dine indriyani. Beginning with the object of hearing, all the vagaries of the senses, the mind and the intellect. Beginning with the object of hearing. And this is the yajna of self-control. Samyama, regulation. And the fourth yajna, which is described in this verse itself, here the senses are made best use of. In the previous one, the senses are restrained. In the next one, the senses are made full use of. For what? For adoration of the Almighty. The senses become the fire and the sense objects, which are the Indriya Vishaya, they become the sacrifice. Shabdadin Vishayan, Indriyagnishu. Beginning with the sound, the sense objects, Indriyagnishu, in the fire of the senses. Jukhvati, are sacrificed. So forms perceived by the eyes, the divine forms perceived by the eyes, are beheld as the manifestations of the Lord. Auspicious utterances are heard sumptuously. Such people who are performing this kind of yajna will avoid hearing any other, sounds. They will focus on hearing auspicious sounds. And they hear it sumptuously, like feeding on a large meal. Sacramental food, prasada, is partaken, is with piety, with devotion. You take the prasada. The smelling of aroma of, say, incense sticks or divine worship in various forms, the aroma that comes up, that is felt as a form of communion with the holy. Flowers, sandal paste, and other kinds of tikka, the tilak tikka that we put, are reverentially applied to the skin. So we have seen that all the five senses, the sense organs, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the taste and the touch, all of them are used for what? All of them are used for oblation to the Supreme, adoration of the Almighty, and used fully, completely using the senses. In this way, the sensual, which essentially is of the sense organs, is transformed into the spiritual. Let's continue with verse 27, the next yajna.
Sarvan indriya karmani.
Sarvan indriya karmani.
Prana karmani chapare.
Prana karmani chapare.
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
सर्वानिन्द्रियकर्माणि प्राणकर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते.
So the fifth yajna. Here also the practice is that of samyama, the restraining aspect. However, the object of samyama, which is the object of dharana, dhyana, samadhi, here is the nirguna Brahman. In the third yajna, we had seen that the object of the samyama was the saguna Brahman, the deity that we have, the object that we have meditated upon in our minds. Here it is nirguna Brahman. In fact, which also means, in other words, there is no object at all. It's nirguna. So, sarvanendriyani karmani, all the functions of all the indriyas, of all the senses, the jnanendriyas and the karmendriyas, the sense organs and the organs of actions, the functions of the sense organs and organs of actions, and also prana karmani, the functions of the pranas, the vital energy, the life breath, the breath of life, which is prana, the functions of the prana, and all these that are jnana deepite, aroused or kindled by the knowledge, are sacrificed, jughvati. And where are they sacrificed? Atma samyama yogagnau, in the fire of self-restraint. All of these are sacrificed in the fire of the self-restraint. See, the mind intellect is a combination of the sentience and the insentient. It's a combination of both. It is like charcoal. When the charcoal is put into the fire, it glows, embers of light and glow. And when the same charcoal is taken out and kept aside, it becomes dull once again, turns back into charcoal, black charcoal, without any glow. Similarly, the mind interacts with the object world and interacts within, with divinity. So when the mind intellect identifies with the object world, it is like the charcoal. When the mind intellect objects identifies with the self, it becomes, or with the Atman, it is like the glowing embers. The identification of the mind with the Atman is referred to as the fire of self-restraint. That identification is the fire of self-restraint. This act is actually a great act and a rare sacrifice. Why? Because the mind intellect gets merged with the Atman. And all the actions of the indriyas and prana, all the karmendriyas, jnanendriyas and the prana, all of them get automatically sacrificed. So controlling the sense organs, both perception and knowledge, is not possible until the seeker's mind is turned fully upon contemplation upon the Supreme. This practice of meditation, this deep, intense practice of meditation, is what we talked about earlier as nididhyasana. This is the same as nididhyasana. This deep, in-depth contemplation. When we do that deep, in-depth contemplation, automatically the functions of the jnanendriyas, the karmendriyas and the pranas get subsumed completely. In our favorite example of getting up early in the morning and going for an exercise, you don't feel sleepy. It gets subsumed automatically. In the beginning, it appears extremely difficult. But after some time, it just gets sacrificed. The next verse covers the yajnas from 6 to 11. We'll go through the next verse, verse 28.
Dravya-yajñāstapo yajñā
Dravya-yajñāstapo yajñā
Yoga-yajñāstata pare
Yogayajnastata pare.
Svadhyayajnaya yajnascha
Swadhyayajnaya yajnascha
yatayas samshitavrataha
yatayashamshitavrataha
द्रव्ययज्ञास्तपो यज्ञा योगयज्ञास्तथा परे स्वाध्यायज्ञाय यज्ञाश्च यतयः संशिताव्रताः.
So Bhagavan says that yet others, the other people, they offer wealth, austerity, and yoga as sacrifice. While some yet more others, the ascetics, Bhagavan refers to them as the ascetics, the yatayaha, the ascetics. They have self-restraint, and they are people of rigid vows. When they take a vow, it is what it is. Jo bol diya, so bol diya. Jo soch liya, so soch liya. The rigid vows. They offer recitation and understanding of scriptures as sacrifice. So let us see what each of these yagyas are from 6 to 11. Yagya 6 is Dravya Yagya. Dravya Yagya means acquiring wealth by honest means and utilizing it for the benefit of society. Tapo Yagya, the 7th Yagya, is austerity, self-purification, tapas, undertaking activities that through which we believe that we become better. Austerities. Yoga Yagya, constant practice of Raja Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. That is the 8th Yagya. Swadhya Yagya, which is recitation of scriptural texts. The shlokas, if we recite Bhagavad Gita, that is Swadhya Yagya. And Jnana Yagya, the 10th Yagya, is understanding the meaning of what we are reciting, understanding the meaning of scriptural texts. And the 11th Yagya is Samshita Vrataha, which is the rigid extreme vows that help one being established. Vivasayatmika Buddhi. That aspect of taking a vow, taking a stand, being established. Samshita means to sharpen. Vrata is nothing but vow. So this rigid ultimate vows people take, like for example, Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, we have seen his life, when he is determined and when he says something, he goes and executes. Like the Dandi Salt March. He just went in, how much ever difficult it was. He took a vow and went through it till the very end. Buddha, a prince before he became Buddha, Siddhartha actually, took a vow, went out, gave up everything and started exploring the universe and creations. Rama is even more sacred because for somebody else, not for the self, but for someone else, taking a vow and performing it till the end, not giving it up. They do not break their vow at any cost, come what may. Those are the people who do Samshrita Vrataha. And the 12th Yagya is in the next verse.
Apani juhvati pranam.
Apane juhvati pranam.
Prane panam tata pare.
Prane panam tata pare.
Pranapanagati ruddhva.
Pranapanagati ruddhva.
Pranayama parayanaha.
Pranayama parayanaha.
Apani juhvati pranam. Prane panam tata pare. Pranapanagati ruddhva. Pranayama parayanaha.
So these people, they offer as sacrifice the outgoing breath in the incoming and the incoming breath in the outgoing. Restraining the flow or the courses of the outgoing and incoming breaths. Solely absorbed in that restraint. thinking, completely absorbed in that restraining of outgoing in the incoming, incoming in the outgoing. Or what is this? The regulation of breath, pranayama. So there is a close relationship between mental activity and breathing. So while activities such as fear, lust, anger, etc., they hinder the flow of breath. We would notice this, when we are angry, the breathing is not smooth. Healthy activity like calmness, affection, contentment, all of this lead to a rhythm in breathing. Breathing becomes more steady and rhythmic. Conversely, if the flow of breath is voluntarily regulated, so we have seen that the mental activity influences breathing. Similarly, if we make an effort, voluntarily make an effort and regulate the breath, the effect on the mind is beneficial. This science of pranayama, or the science of pranayama, evolved from this fact or this observation. Prana is nothing but the air that is going out, the exhalation or the swasha. Apana is the taking in of air, the prashvasha or the inhalation. Apane jukhvati pranam is what Bhagavan says, the offering of the prana in the apana, offering of the exhalation in the exhalation. This is called puraka. And prane apana, which is the offering of the apana in the prana, the offering of the inhalation in the exhalation. This is called rechaka. And stopping both prana and apana is called kumbhaka. So puraka, rechaka, kumbhaka. These are the elements of pranayama. Continuing in verse 30, Bhagavan says,
Apare niyataharaha
Apare niyataharaha
prana pranishu juhvati
pranan praneshu juhvati
sarve pete yajna vidaha
sarvepyete yajna vidaha
yajnakshipita kalmashaha
yagyakshapita kalmashaha
apare niyataharaha pranan pranishu juhvati sarve pete yajna vidaha yajnakshipita kalmashaha.
So the first line of this verse is continuation from the previous verse, which is where Bhagavan says, Apane jukhvati pranam prane panam. Offering of the prana in the apana and the apana in the prana. And apare niyatahara jukhvati pranan praneshu. So pranan praneshu is one prana into the other. What is one prana into the other? Apane jukhvati pranam, prane apanam. So one into the other. The exhalation into the inhalation and the inhalation into the exhalation. And this person does it through regulation of diet. Niyata ahara. Ahara is diet. Niyata is regulating the diet. And regulating the diet, they sacrifice one prana into the other. Regulation of diet is extremely, extremely important for this. Otherwise, the sacrificing of one prana into another will not happen, will not be effective. And pranayama done ineffectively can be very unhealthy to the mind and to the body. So as much as mental activity affects breathing and vice versa, breathing affects mental activity, the food passing through our digestive system, circulatory system, excretory system affect the mental and physical well-being. Human beings consume food to please the taste buds that are located in the 2-3 inches of the tongue. That is what we do all the time. And the food industry has capitalized on this and made a huge commerce out of it. Regulation of diet is an extremely critical aspect of spiritual progress. And Bhagavan says that these practitioners, they control their diet and then do pranayama parayana, which is they stop both prana and the apana. That is, they practice kumbhaka, or offering one prana into the other. So how it works is Antakumbhaka is taking a deep breath in and holding it. In the Apana, you sacrifice your prana, taking a deep breath, holding it. And Bahya Kumbhaka, release your breath fully and hold again. In the prana, you offer the Apana. This is called Pranayama Yajna. And in the second line of this verse, Bhagavan says, what is the outcome of these 12 yajnas? So he has given us 12 different yajnas, 12 different forms of how we can sacrifice to the Supreme in order to go from the lower to the higher. And he says, what is the outcome? What is the benefit of performing, of understanding these 12 yajnas? Sarve pyete yajna vidaha. All those, sarve, yajna vidaha, who know, who understand. Vidaha, vidu is knowledge. Yajna is who understand the yajna, who know the yajna, the knowers of sacrifice. Yajnaksha pita kalmashaha. They destroy their sins through sacrifice. Now, once again, the word sin, which is a very misunderstood word. So here, kalmashaha means the mental dirt. Remember, Bhagavan first scolds Arjuna about the kalmashaha that is there in his mind. So the disturbances in the mind, the mental dirt that are there, that is the sin. Shapitaha. Shapitaha means they are washed away, they are destroyed. By what? By performing the yajna. Don't we experience it? In the example that we are talking about, getting up early in the morning, sacrificing sleep. It's one of the most difficult things for human beings to do, sacrificing that even 1 hour of sleep. But after some time, we feel that exhalation. That is washing away of the sin. That feeling of, achievement, that feeling of that high of achieving something is washing away of the sin. And Bhagavan continues. In fact, I think I jumped myself. Let's come to the point in the next verse.
Yajnashishtamrita bhujaha.
Yajnashishtamrita bhujaha.
Yanti brahma sanatanam.
Yanti brahma sanatanam.
Nayam lokosta yajnasya.
Nayam lokosta yajnasya.
Kutonyat kuru sattama.
Kutonyas kuru sattama.
Yajnashishtamrita bhujaha. Yanti brahma sanatanam. Nayam lokostya yajnasya. Kutonyat kuru sattama.
Yajnasishtamrita bhujaha. The remnants of sacrifice, which is amrita, that they eat, quote unquote. Yajnasishta is what? Yajnasishta is what remains after the performance of sacrifice. And what does Bhagavan say remains after the performance of sacrifice? The amrita. And the amrita is what is consumed. Here the usage of eat means getting that benefit of whatever it is. Sometimes it is physically eating, sometimes it can be something else, some other form of consumption. So whatever a person does must be conducive to a higher purpose. Whatever we do in our life, we must endeavor that action, whatever we do, is conducive, is aligned to a sense of higher purpose. And that itself makes it unselfish. When we talk about performance of activity that is not selfish. So when that happens, the remnants of the action become nectar. It's like the high that one feels after extreme hard work, whatever that hard work may be. That sense of high is nectar. This means that every act of self-denial takes the person towards perfection. So if you want to be more perfect in your fitness, you have to deny yourself the sleep. If you want to come first in exam, you have to deny yourself that recreation or 2.5 hours of movie or whatever it may be. And there are infinite such examples. So when the worldly aspects in a person are sacrificed, divinity emerges. And that divinity is Amrita. And definitely, Yanti Brahma Sanatanam. When this is done, that person reaches supreme eternal Brahman. Yanti Brahma Sanatanam. A person who offers his jiva as oblation gains Brahman, which is the higher and the original state. And when the highest can be gained by performance of yajna, obviously the lower aspects, the normal pleasures of worldly life can also be gained. Performance of yajna, sacrificing the lower for the attainment of the higher. That is what it means. So no doubt we can achieve all these day-to-day pleasures that we yanker for. So sacrificing the sleep for exercise, we sleep soundly the next day. We may sleep that 1 hour less, but the sleep is so much more sound. We feel healthier, we feel better, we sleep better. But that sacrificing of that time that we spent on sleep is very important. Yanti Brahma Sanatanam. And then Bhagavan says, Nayam Lokostya Yagyasya. A person who does not, Na I am, who does not perform, that person is not fit for the world. This world is surely not for that person. What Bhagavan is saying is that such a person would not be able to achieve even his or her own goals. Remember the Purushartha. We talked about the various aspects of Purushartha. Even those, the person, the worldly goals will not be able to achieve. And when the person cannot achieve the worldly goals, Kutonya Kurusattama. Kutonya, how can he achieve the higher pursuits? Kurusattama is nothing but, he's addressing Arjuna. O prime, the best among the Kurus. O Arjuna, you are the best. So the selfish seeker thrives nowhere and actually shrinks. And not only that, the world views that person with disdain. Over a period of time, that is what happens. And Bhagavan continues in the next verse.
Evam bahuvidha yajna.
Evam bahuvidha yajna.
Vitata brahmano mukhe.
Vitata brahmano mukhe.
Karmajan vidditan sarvan.
Karmajan vidditan sarvan.
Evam jnatva vimoksyase.
Evam yatva vimoksyase.
Evam bahuvidha yajna. Vitata brahmano mukhe. Karmajan vidditan sarvan. Evam jnatva vimoksyase.
Evam, in this manner, bahuvidha yajna, many kinds of yajna. Yajna is what? Spiritual practices, worship, giving up the lower for the higher, many such kinds of yajna. Vitata are spread. Mukhe brahmano. Mukhe means in the face of reaching the Brahman, implying are spread as the means of reaching the Brahman. So various yajnas, sacrifices are prescribed. In our day-to-day life, if we start discussing specific instances of what we want to achieve, we can identify what we need to give up to achieve whatever we want. Whatever we want to achieve, we have to give up something else. You cannot achieve something without giving up something else. That's impossible in our life. So various types of these yajnas are prescribed, and they are prescribed as a means to achieve the supreme. Sarvantan, all of them, karmajan, are born out of action. They are based upon action. Remember, Bhagavan always says Karma Yoga. He glorifies Karma Yoga. And here also he says, all these yagyas which will take you to the Supreme are born out of action, Karmajan. Jnanatva evam vimokshase. Knowing this as such, knowing thus, you shall be liberated, vimokshase. So those who convert karma into yajna conform to the sacred plans of nature. All the happenings in nature are capable of being converted into yajna. You can live without converting to yajna also, but then that would be a mundane life. But every single thing has the capacity to be converted into yajna. And recognizing that capacity is the primary aspect of growing spiritually and achieving material success. While karma in its ordinary form is binding, in the form of yajna, it is liberating. That is what Bhagavan means by vimokshase. When performed as yajna, the same karma becomes liberating. So let us focus on performing all our karma as yajna. Bhagavan will now continue and he'll proceed to advise which among the yajnas is the best. He gives a recommendation also. We shall see that in the next satsang. Thank you, Hari Om. We'll finish with invocation.
Om Asato Ma Tatgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Namaha. Hari Om.
Hari Om, thank you.
Hari Om, thank you.
Any thoughts, comments? Good. I think today most people are either contemplating, silent,
contemplating, Srini.
They're very clear in their thoughts.
Sorry? Okay, sir, I didn't.
They have great clarity in their thoughts.
Anupama, you want to share what you are contemplating?
Not yet, Srini. I'm just thinking.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So Hari Om Srini, let me start then.
Hi, Kushal.
In the Yoga Sutras, there's mention about a mention about Paragatma and Pratyagatma, section 27 only. Verse 27. So I know we'll be dealing with the types of yagnas in the hierarchy of which yagna is better and all in the next satsang, as you mentioned. But talking about that Dravya Yagna, text 28. So where God has, or where Krishna has kind of illustrated that some build out of the charities what people do, out of the pilgrimages what people do, out of the, like what we are doing, you can say this is the Swadhyaya Yagna, that reading the scriptures and all. So is it that there is a particular kind of or particular path that one chooses according to one's own discretion, or is there a higher power that directs us to one or the other form? What is this according to you?
I would say it's both. One chooses and there is direction. Both happen. When one chooses, there is direction. When there is direction, one is able to choose. However, Bhagwan actually, you know what, he will just tell you one yajna which is supreme. And
Okay.
that will then lead to all others. I would say that being aware, being the knower of yajna, having the jnana about all the yajnas, that is important. And as per the situation in our life, as per the circumstances in our life, being able to have that clarity of knowledge of what the yajnas are will enable us to choose what we need to do better. Right? So first step should be the awareness and the knowledge of all the yajnas, and when that is there, we'll be able to choose what we need to do in a much better manner. And when we do this, the direction also comes along with that.
Yeah, I understand. In addition to this, so if like I not kind of rebuttaling on what you said, but my main question was arising from this, that if I as a human, I'm also dealing in the I and me right now, but if I as a human has the discretion to choose, then how does the gene that we inherit from our parents and the samskaras that are there in a family, in the familial tradition, how do they determine the course of action of which yagna one goes through in life?
They do. I mean, how do they do? It will be, customized. It will be specific. They'll determine in a particular way in your case, and they'll determine in a different way in my case. So it differs from human being to human being. In the same way, what you choose will be different from what I choose. So both in terms of, the larger. So that's what we started right in the beginning, that we are all part of that environment. And the awareness, and even Stephen Hawking says that, the awareness of the environment which we are in makes us more successful, right? So the awareness of our genetic code, the awareness of our practices, awareness of, the things that we have brought down through generations, choice to follow or not to follow, effort to understand what they are and what they are not. All of them will play a role, each one of them. So our choice will get influenced by the knowledge and the awareness, and the knowledge and the awareness and the direction, the divine direction, will influence our choice. It works both ways.
Yeah.
Is it necessary that it has to be done in a sequence, one yajna after the other, or it can be done in the way a person wishes?
Yeah, it does. There is no such sequence.
Okay.
And one more question. So in the Shiva Purana, it's mentioned that the 19th avatara of Shiva is the culmination of a lady called Yati, and it's called Yatindranath. So basically, Yati, as it is mentioned, is a Vaishya, is a prostitute, and Shiva gets into an avatara. It's like I may not be able to explain, but that is the context. So then, in relation to that, what is they say in Mela, what is dirt and what is clarity? Because you can be in any realm and yet you can inherit the higher realms with your samskaras, with your actions. So then, what is dirt and what is clarity?
So I've not read the Shiva Purana, so I don't know the specific story that emerges from that that you are referring to. But fundamentally, the question is valid in all contexts, right? And even here, Bhagavan talks about kalmasha, right? So see the disturbance, and we have actually covered this in detail earlier in our satsanga. The disturbance in our mind comes from our own inclinations as well as activities. The inclinations comes from what our vasanas are. The vasanas comes from our genetic code and our dispositions. So our dispositions and genetic code lead to our vasanas and inclination, lead to our actions and our tendencies, right? All of that. And depending on how we approach this, either there is disturbance or there is removal of disturbance. that removal of disturbance is the cleansing. And if there is more disturbance, if there is more stress, then there is obviously the kalmasha, the dirt.
Yeah.
So the dirt in the mind is nothing but the disturbance or whatever causes that mental instability is the dirt in the mind.
Yes, definitely.
And
Makes
one of the best ways to remove that is through devotion. This Bhagavan covered in the previous chapter and continues also later in chapter 12. One of the biggest ways is through devotion. And in fact, even in Hanuman Chalisa, when you start off, that is how it starts off. What better way than the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord to help clean up my mental impurities. Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more thoughts, then we will continue next time. I expect to finish chapter 4 in the next satsang. Looking forward to that, and see you next Saturday. Thank you all. Hari Om.